Hello friends, it's Nicole Spohr here today and I'm so happy you're joining me. Today I'm sharing this Peking Birthday Frogs card. This card is full of awesome Simon Says Stamp exclusive stamps and dies, and I'll even incorporate this awesome little birthday hat from Fawn that works great with these frogs. I love mixing and matching supplies for cards. We are going to use quite a few different products here, starting with the Peking Frog and the Peking Talking Frog dies. These are great little circular shapes that I'm going to die cut from a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of smooth white cardstock. I've also laid out part of my greetings to give me an idea where those are going to go on my card design so that I leave enough room for those in the middle. I'm going to take those over to my die cutting machine and die cut those from the panel. In the finished card, you might notice that the panel is a little bit narrower than it is when I start. I did this on purpose so that I would make sure and have enough room for my frogs, and I can trim it down later. We're going to go ahead and take some Copic markers and color in our frogs. I'm going with a kind of minty green color combination that you might wonder why I'm doing that at the beginning. That's going to be our light highlight color. We can go in then with G09 and G02 and build that color up. This minty green color ends up working out so nicely with the distress ink colors I use for the happy birthday or the HBD, and also as the background for another greeting, which we'll get to here in a little bit. I love this color combination. It's one of my absolute favorites for frogs. I'm going back in once I have my blending done and adding small dots with G09 and G02. The eyes do pop out if you're not careful, and that's so that if you want a paper piece, you can definitely do that. Because I'm already customizing the frogs with Copic markers, I decided to customize their eyes as well. I used two yellow markers actually for the eye part, and then I took a black gel pen and added detail to the center part of the eyes. Now on one of those, I actually smudge it here along the bottom edge of the card. So that's where being able to remove those eyes and replace them with one you haven't smudged is really easy. I actually got my hand in the black glaze pen. The black glaze pen takes a minute to dry, and I must have got my hand in it, and of course I set it right down on the yellow part of the eye where it's not going to come out. So I do replace that a little bit later in the video, and I'll do that off camera. We're coloring our second frog just like the first, and that dot detail, you can see here's a difference between the blended color and then the dot detailing up at the top. The dot detailing makes all the difference, and it takes just a second to add that in. The texture is fantastic. Next, I'm going to trim down my panel. It's actually going to measure 3 7/4. Pardon me, 7/4. How about 3/4? So 3 3/4 by 5 1/2 inches. I have trimmed another panel exactly the same, maybe even a little narrower, not a lot, just a tiny touch, because this is actually going to go behind that. And I'm going to ink up the bottom and the top with Mermaid Lagoon Distress ink. And I'm concentrating the ink along the bottom or top edge of the panel, depending on which side that I'm inking, and then lightening it for that ombre look as I go up. What this will do is make and concentrate the ink color along the bottom edge or top edge, depending on which frog window we're looking through, and then lighten it as it goes. I had considered using a couple of shades of ink, and I just couldn't come up with something I really liked, and so I ended up going with one, and I was so super thrilled with how this turned out. When I place that behind, that looks exactly how I want it to look. So much fun. We are going to stamp some sentiments directly on the background. This is a sentiment happy and sentiment heavy card. We're going to use the phrases time to eat cake and maybe eat cake on this card. These are both from the Big Birthday Greetings stamp set. They are so cute and fun. This is a large 6x8 stamp set, and I grabbed those because I thought it would be kind of funny and almost like you could use a thought bubble if you wanted to. I felt like it might be a little too much for this card design, but I wanted them to be next to each of the frog circular openings, almost like the first one says time to eat cake and the second frog says and maybe eat cake. Next, I have a piece of fun foam that I'm going to back both sides with Stick It adhesive. If you've ever watched any of my videos where I die cut a dimensional sentiment, usually a scripty one, this is how I always create that. I've got fun foam, I'll place Stick It on both sides, then I run this through my die cutting machine to secure the Stick It to the fun foam really well. And then I'll remove one of the sides of backing paper from the fun foam and replace it with a piece of cardstock. This is what I use to cut out that sentiment. And my fun foam was a little longer than my cardstock. We're going to take the happy birthday die, and because I'm not using the rectangle shape, I don't need to use quite as much of that, and I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine. This creates a sticker, which makes adhering it to a card so much easier. So I've die cut it first, and then I'm going to take 2 shades of Distress ink and blend them onto those letters. This is where I am implementing the blue of the background with the green of the frogs, and I think it works so nicely. I'm not certain that I have used Mermaid Lagoon and Twisted Citron, or at least haven't used these together in quite some time, but it might be my new favorite color combination, or even new old favorite color combination. I love how these look, and as you blend them together, you get that third shade in the middle. And I worked really hard to kind of get that third shade in the middle for that seamless blend. So, so pretty. You could even save the negative part of this letter and use it for another card if you wanted to. Once I have my letters blended, I am going to pop my now sticker letters out and pop them on my card design. However, before I do that, I realized I had another phrase I needed to stamp onto my card base. I don't want the foam adhesive of the letters to make that kind of wonky. So I'm going to use my die to help me line up where that's going to go, and I'm stamping Happy Birthday Dude from the Stop Drop Party stamp set. How fun is the name of that stamp set? I think it's so, so fun. This is an amazing stamp set for birthdays. And this is one of Kathy Zielski's stamp sets for Simon Says Stamp, and I just love her designs. I think this is awesome. So I've stamped Happy Birthday Dude right in the middle there. I did use my Misty, and I'm glad I did because the word dude did not stamp that great the first time. I'm using Simon Says Stamp black dye ink for my black stamping, and then I'm going to line up the HBD right above this. And you can see I can just pop those sticker letters out, and I think they pop really nicely off of that white background. It's starting to come together, but it's still looking a little plain. We are going to add another phrase from Stop Drop Party, but this one does have a coordinating die. You could definitely stamp it directly onto your card base if you wanted to. I would have done that right when I stamped Happy Birthday Dude if I wanted to do that. But I decided I wanted to try using the coordinating die, and I'm really glad I did because it allowed me to have a colorful background that ties into the HBD. I'm going to take the remaining piece of cardstock that is attached to Fun Foam and ink it up with my Mermaid Lagoon and Twisted Citron Distress inks. Then I'm going to take a heat tool and heat this and make sure that the distress inks are all the way dry. Before stamping You Were Born, Now We Party from Stop Drop Party with the Simon Says Stamp Clear Embossing ink and Heat Embossing with Simon Says Stamp White Detail Embossing Powder. The white of the Now sentiment is going to tie into all of the white on the background of our card, but the background is going to be that amazing distress ink blended background that complements HBD so well and really brings in more color to the card, even though it's just in the background of this little die cut piece. You'll see what I mean once I die cut this little phrase. Because it doesn't look awesome until you get it die cut, and then once I did that, I thought, oh, I love this. This really, really worked well, and I'm excited to use more phrases like this in the future. It does die cut pretty close to the sentiment. I've run that through my die cutting machine again, and now I have another sticker that I can place right on my card. You might also notice that I have pre-die cut some birthday hats. These are from the Lawn Fawn Stitched Cupcake die collection, and they just happen to be the perfect size to fit on these frogs' head. I also think that if you ever wanted to use any of the Simon Says Stamp picture book dies, these would be amazing for those as well if you wanted to turn any critter into a birthday critter. I did back my panel off camera with foam adhesive. I want it to be popped up just a little bit so that the difference between that little silhouetted frog really shows up, and that is fantastic with some foam adhesive. And then I'm going to glue the party hats together. These were just die cut from a blue, which is the Simon Says Stamp Island blue cardstock. And then the yellow cardstock is Gina K Dandelion Yellow. And we're going to pop those up with foam adhesive as well, right so they look like they're right on top of the frogs' heads. I'll take Nuvo Crystal Drops in White Blizzard and add a little drop to the top of each hat. You could also die cut the hats from smooth white cardstock, color them in with Copic markers to totally customize them, just like we did the frogs if you want to do that. It's starting to take shape. I'm so excited. I'm loving how this is turning out. Next, I'm going to take 3 shades of Simon Says Stamp ink. We're using Sunshine, Island Blue, and Green Apple to stamp stars from the Stop Drop Party stamp set onto the background. I would have done this before I added the foam adhesive, but I thought I wanted to use the coordinating die for the star. There is a coordinating die, but I ended up not using it just to save time because it was going to be a ton of die cutting, and I really like how the stars look stamped directly on the background. I am using a piece of scrap paper to the side. I wanted to make sure the stars were stamping perfectly and they weren't picking up color from one of the other ink colors I'm using before I took them to my project. I'm also using second generation stamping for the Island Blue, as I felt like the first generation, while super pretty, was a little bit too dark for my project, and I liked the second generation a little better. We're going to add that scattering of stars throughout, kind of coming up from the top circle and scattered throughout the sentiment down to the bottom. Glossy Accents is going to be used for the frog's eyes to really make those pop. Finally, the last thing I want to do is I want this panel to really pop off the background. You guys probably already know, but the diagonal stripe background from Simon Says Stamp is one of my very favorites for creating my own diagonal striped pattern paper. I'm stamping a piece of smooth white cardstock with the diagonal stripe and the Simon Says stamp, black dye ink. I used the Misty so that I could stamp it more than once to get a nice dark impression. But instead of using the whole sheet of paper, I'm simply going to trim about 1/2 inch strips from this background, and I still have some that I can still use for this for another project. And I'm going to place these down both sides of a standard A2 sized top fold card base. This is going to give the illusion of matting our center panel on a striped background, and that little stripe down both sides really sets off the design perfectly. Then I'll put adhesive all over the back of the card base and pop that down to finish the card. And look at what a difference that diagonal stripe makes for this fun boy-themed birthday card, boy or guy themed. I know it's always a struggle to come up with great card designs for those guys in our life, and I hope this gives you some fun ideas with some great products from Simon Says Stamp. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this birthday-themed frog card featuring Simon Says stamps and dies. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel to never miss a card making or paper crafting video. Here are a couple more videos featuring Simon Says stamps and dies that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.